Hi guys, welcome to Backend Engineering School, and as part of this video I'll try to cover a roadmap for the backend development. And if you are at any stage if you are a fresher, if you are a mid-level developer, if you are a junior developer, if you are a senior developer, this roadmap can help you to become better or upgrade your career option, right? So I have already written a newsletter on this. You can go to suchet.substack.com and read it thoroughly, right? So I'll try to present it and verbally. So this is the backend development ecosystem that I have written, right? So it's a journey of backend developer. So if you see in the beginning, you have the fundamentals of development. You see, this is a fresher. This is only for fresher. Then you have framework based software development. Then you have DevOps practices. Then you have fundamental design principles, advanced system design, distributed system design. We try to understand what is it. So if you are a fresher, let's say, if you are at the very beginning level, then you must understand the fundamentals of backend development. Let's say if you are a guy, because how I joined in, I was a CDEC student, right? And from Pune, I did my CDEC, and then I went to a company. From there itself, I got placed. So we were not, so the project, if you remember, the project that I developed at the time when we were doing the CDEC, they were they are very small and using very outdated technology. It was based on JDBC, right? And then it was using servlet and all those things, right? That people don't even use in the production scenarios in the real world companies. But that's okay. That's okay. At least you started. What matters is at least you started. So as I said, that's why I said, as a fresher, nobody will expect you to, be a champion at Spring Boot, microservices, distributed system, etc., so on and so forth. I see a lot of people, they want to place at a good companies or a big names, right? They want to prepare for system design. Think about it. You are a fresher, no, and why do people even, talk about system design with you? From your job role perspective, you see system design is way far from what you do in the beginning of the career. So if you do so, that's okay. That's your basically opinion. That's your choice. But in my opinion, I think that being a fresher, people should understand. And this is, again, I'm not talking about big companies, but I'm talking about the basic companies, at least the journey that I have. I never been to Facebook, Google, and all those big companies, right? So I cannot tell you how to be a candidate who can basically achieve a job at Google and all those companies. But I have been working at many consulting companies, and I have worked with many customers. So I'm also working as a senior dev, so I can tell you at least how you can become a senior developer. That's the experience that I'm sharing you with. So being a fresher, what you could do is you should understand the fundamentals. You should have a solid understanding of fundamentals. So when I say fundamentals, that means, for example, if you are starting out with Java, you should understand the collections. You should also understand. So when I say collection, that's internally data structures, right? If you already know the data structure, collections are nothing but the implementation of data structures, right? For example, you have list, there could be a linked list, there could be an array list, different kind of things. Point is, if you have a good grasp on the data structures, collections, the fundamentals, right? You should understand the fundamentals, for example, the exception handling, right? One should understand, okay, how can I handle the exception? But now when you will go into a company, maybe in your organization, people are doing a different kind of exception handling. Maybe in some other organization, they are doing some kind of different exception handling. Point is, you should understand the principle of exception handling. Right, so the thumb rule is you should be good at the fundamentals part of it. So when I say fundamentals, here if you go in the dev, right, I've defined the criteria for freshers, for your college pass out, junior, mid-level, senior dev, staff engineer, etc., etc. So when I say the fundamentals development, I would rather cover the fundamentals of Git, right? So when I was in CDEC, nobody taught me Git, right? But if you see across all of the software development organization, everybody is using Git. So one should understand the basic terminologies of Git, the basic commands of Git, how rebasing works, what is stashing, etc., etc., so on and so forth. Or IntelliJ, how can in the IntelliJ you can use the Git operation. Even if you are a QA, you should have a good understanding of Git operation. If you are not a manual automation QA, right? Second thing that you can start with is a good understanding of any core language. If you want to become a backend developer, you could select any language. Select Java, select Python, Node.js, Go, whatsoever. Based upon your preference, based upon your individual interest, you can select any language. I have seen people selecting Java as the major option. Nowadays, people are going for Node.js, Python as well. These languages are also quite popular in the industry. Based upon your interest, you can select. But the point is, when you are going through a core language, you are learning a core language, you should understand the basics of that particular language. For example, how if works, how the for loop works, the concept of oops, how can we implement it, the exception handling, serialization, deserialization, right? All those things you can learn. Second thing, the collections, the strong foundations of collections. I'm very sure that in my career, day in day out as a developer, you will see collections everywhere, every single day you will have to deal with collections. So you should be very, very good at the collections. You should understand the oops concept, right? For example, if you have a method, if you want to overload that, how can you overload the method? All those things, the abstract class, the interface. So you should have this understanding, and then you should also understanding, if you are Go, Java, you should have some understanding of threading. I won't say that you should be a champion at threading, but at least you should have a decent basic knowledge of threading, the different stages of thread, right? What is thread dump, right? What is heap dump? All those kind of terminology. Then I will say the memory level understanding. For example, in Java, you have the memory management, the different memory structure, how your data of memory, the data in the memory of your language, all those variables and everything, classes, objects, how these gets organized in the memory at the very ground level. You should have this understanding. Once you cover all those things, right, you will get an idea of a solid idea of any programming language. Once you are done with this, now you can go for the design patterns and solid principles. Now you can cover, I won't say you should learn all the design patterns, but understand the basics of design pattern. For example, you can learn the different type of creation patterns, builder pattern, you can say factory, abstract factory, right? You can learn the observer pattern, you can learn the iterator pattern, you can learn the command pattern, you can understand the adapter pattern. All these different kind of patterns, design patterns, you can understand. And then once you have the basic understanding and you go into a project, you can see the implementation. For example, if you have a kind of a command, or let's say if you have zip strategy, if you want to zip it, now maybe in the Linux, that the zip operation can be something else, and the Windows something else, right? So the idea, if you know the design patterns, you can implement. Okay, we can implement the design strategy, that you could have a basic zip strategy, and then those strategies can be implemented differently for different operating system. So, but you can only get that mindset once you have the fundamentals understanding of the design patterns, right? And then the solid principles are very common, right? Hardly will take you 1 hour to understand the solid principles. So I would say you should also understand the solid principles. Once you do that, right, I have already covered that the collection and data structure, the link between the collections and the data structure. Then I would say that you can learn the different type of data structure. For example, you have queues, right? So what is the implementation of queue in Java, right? Now this question can come up, right? You could use linked list for your queue, because what happens in the linked list, everything comes after the another, right? So you could use queue in a way, in basically in that way. So there are multiple operations. For example, if you have heap, which collection in the Java is connected with the heap operation. So first you should understand what is heap, what is minimum heap and max heap. Basics of data structure. I'm not going to, you go and solve 100 problems of heap, then only you can understand the heap. That's okay, that's your choice. If you have time, you can always go ahead, right? But one should understand what is max heap, what is min heap, and what is the implementation of heap in the programming language. I know, for example, in Java, you could use priority queues, right? You can pass on a comparator in order to create a minimum heap or to max heap. So those understanding, right? Different type of trees you have, those kind of things you can learn basically as part of the fundamentals. And then once you're done with the data structure, you can basically go for the fundamentals of database. You could learn any SQL, SQL based data, for example, Postgres, MySQL. Very simple. Select any NoSQL, MongoDB. You don't want to go Elasticsearch, don't go. Select MongoDB, Cassandra, anyone. Again, being a fresher, I won't say that you will learn everything, but by the experience, you will understand. Although you know Mongo, but you will understand that not every place you can apply the MongoDB, right? Though there are different trade-offs. That will come up with the experience, and you can learn always. Now you can basically in the database you can understand the basics, the basic commands, right, and the join operations, the NoSQL databases, and all those things. You will try playing the queries and all, right? And then you should also have the basic understanding of networking. What is your TCP/IP stack, OSI model, right? So what is how HTTP works, how HTTPS works? These are very important, and these comes as a part of your fundamentals of job. So once you do that, then I think for a fresher, at least from my opinion, I think this is it for being a fresher, right? But nowadays, if there is a high demand, you can learn some part of the framework based as well. For example, if someone can ask you to create an application using Spring Boot, right? Now you have Quarkus, Micronaut, you don't have to fall into. Learn the fundamentals of Spring, learn the fundamentals of Spring Boot, try creating any project on it, you are done, right? Now, once you are done with that, there is another factor, right, that plays a big role with the freshers. A lot of candidates say that. Then again, I would say this second point depends from the organization to organization, right? But I would say that having a decent communication, if you are a fresher, don't only focus on your technical skills. Just try to spend some time on your communication as well, right? Try to some time. I won't say nobody in the India, nobody is a foreigner, nobody is American, right? Everybody comes from a Hindi background. You can always learn, but you could try to learn some decent communication, right? So if your grammar is bad, that's okay. That's totally okay. Try to be very decent communication, learn some verbal skill, listening skills, right? Or try to be good at the decent communication. When I say decent communication, that means if you're talking to somebody in your company, then the other person should enjoy talking to you, right? It's not that if the other person is talking and you are basically interrupting him in between, and the other person is being irritating, I don't want to talk to this guy. He doesn't even listen properly. So listening skills, all those skills. So that comes as part of the decent communication. Now, second thing, being a mid-level or junior developer, you can deep dive into the framework-based software development. So if you are a mid or junior level development, that means you are good at the fundamentals of development. Now you can move on to your framework-based development. Now you can select any framework you want. For example, if you are in Java, right? You can select Spring Boot. You are a Python guy, you can select Flask or FastAPI. You are a Node.js guy, you can select Express.js. There are multiple n number of frameworks, and don't be very bind to a particular framework. That totally depends on the organization you are working. Maybe let's say there is some startup, they want to use the latest technology and they are not using Spring Boot. Maybe they are using Micronaut. What happens then? You should understand the fundamentals again. I will come to the fundamentals again and again. Then you should have the fundamentals knowledge of it. When I say fundamental, let's say I'll give you few pointers here, right? Using this pointer, let's say if you go to an organization and that particular organization using a different framework, you don't know that framework. That what happens then? You won't say that, okay, no, I only know the Express.js, I only know the Flask, so I won't be working on this particular framework. Don't bind yourself very closely to a particular framework. Be open to accept the other frameworks. Be open to learn other frameworks as well. So when I say learn, you don't have to learn everything. You don't have to be very master and do a PhD in a framework. When I say framework, that I have listed few pointers here, right? if you know these, how to achieve these pointers with the framework, you can basically have a decent knowledge for a particular framework. You go to any organization, on an average, any framework, any implementation of application for any framework must be using any of these pointers, or let's say all pointers, right? So what I mean is, for any framework, if you want to learn over weekend, understand that how can you integrate the database with that particular framework. If let's say, if I'm a guy, I want to learn a new framework today, and if I want to learn the fast API of Flask, so I would understand that how can I integrate the database. When I say integration of database, that I mean is ORM, right? Object relationship mapping. How can I implement the ORM in a particular framework, right? Database migration. If you have a framework, you want to migrate the database, because in an organization what happens is, you don't go in the database and create all the schema. You control your migrations using application itself. So you should understand how to implement the database migration. For example, if you are in Node.js, you should understand how to perform the database migration. If you are using Flask, you should understand how to perform the database migration with Flask. If you are a Spring Boot, you should understand how to perform the database migration with the Spring Boot, etc., etc. Now, another thing understand is, if you want to call any service using REST, or let's say any async service, sync service, right, over HTTP, how can you call that particular service within a service? So understand that. Also understand how can you manage configurations, how can you override configuration, because there are different environments when you work in a software organization. And then configuration property overrides. Configuration property it varies environment to environment. How can you manage that kind of configuration? Also understand the tracing. How can you implement the tracing and the logging part? Understand how to debug that particular framework application, what kind of IDE you are using. Understand how to implement security within. For example, if you are working with Flask, try implementing OAuth2 in it. How can you implement OAuth2? The JWT. Spring Boot, the concept of JWT will be same. The implementation varies. Now you want to learn a framework, implementation varies, learn the implementation. That's it. Learn how can you Dockerize the application, the framework application you have created. Learn how to perform caching in it. Learn how to create async jobs in it. How to create event systems. How can you integrate that particular framework application with the Kafka, ActiveMQ, whatsoever. Try to learn these few points with any framework, you will be master at it, right? And if you go to any organization, your implementation may vary, right? Somebody has created some other library, some using external library, some has written their own code. Everything can vary, but core concepts will be same. So understand these all concepts with any framework that you want to learn with. So if you are a fresher, you have selected Java, you have selected Spring Boot, learn Spring Boot, try doing all these pointers with the Spring Boot, right? All right, now let's go back and then understand. Now, if you are, let's say, a fresher, now you have learned all these things, you have become a mid-level developer. If you want to become a mid-level developer, you should also understand the communication. Communication is the key, understand. Generally what happens is, we as a developer works in the engineering team, right? But don't think that you only have to deal with the other developers. You may not, right? That depends on the organization. So many times in your meetings, there will be some other stakeholders. For example, there will be some business analysts, there's some product owners, right? Scrum masters. Now, you may be talking something, but those guys don't have the technical visibility. They will understand something else. So you will have to communicate in a way, try to explain in a way so they understand, right? That's it. And then you also have to be outspoken in the meeting. It's not like that you only speak when you are supposed to. If you have a point in mind, you have a question in mind, you can always say sorry to interrupt and you can ask your questions. You have to be outspoken and contribute to your meetings, what happens day in day out, right? So you should have some inputs in the meetings as well. Once you do all those things, right, and you have a good grasp on fundamentals, you have good grasp on frameworks, then you can always go for understanding the DevOps practices. Okay. Now, let's say you want to become a senior developer, you have all those understandings so far. Learn DevOps concepts now. When I say DevOps, today a lot of our organization has already gone through a lot of digital transformation. Old companies are doing digital transformations. Old company has already done digital transformation, and now they have started using Kubernetes, right, or any kind of, let's say, container orchestration platform. They are using a Docker. Try to learn Docker, try to learn Kubernetes. If you go down, I have written that what all things you can learn as part of your DevOps as a developer, right? If you want to become only a DevOps guy, you should go deeper, because people will expect more from you. If you are a developer, you should understand all these fundamentals. For example, you should understand the release cycle. What is release cycle? How software gets released? Every organization, I'm sure, will have a different release cycle, but the fundamentals will still be same. The core concepts will still be same, right? You should know CI/CD, right? You should know Docker. Try to learn Docker commands, try to learn Kubernetes command, try to understand how Docker works, try to understand how Kubernetes works, how can you use different kind of manifest file to deploy in Kubernetes, right? Try to learn Helm. How can you deploy using Helm in Kubernetes? All those things. Try to do yourself a project in your local. Try to set up a mini kube cluster in your local computer and try to deploy all those things, right? So once you do that, now I would say, as a senior dev, try to pick a cloud, pick any cloud. For example, if your organization, they are using Microsoft Azure, pick Microsoft Azure and try doing experimentations into it. Understand Azure, right? Understand serverless in it, understand how database works in it, understand how Kubernetes works in it, understand how your containers works in it, understand how your firewall works in it, how your API gateway works in it. Try to explore the different aspects of cloud. Or you can, also approach in a way, for example, if your organization is using AWS, now what all components that your organization is using, you can always go for those, right? So take a free subscription in any cloud, try to understand, pick any cloud and get a cloud certificate. If you don't want to get certified, that's okay, but at least learn the fundamentals of it, right? So even if you are a QA, if you are a BA, you should have a basic knowledge of the ecosystem. For example, today, if an organization is using AWS, then AWS is the ecosystem of any organization, right? It's an asset. So even if you are a BA, you should at least have a basic understanding of cloud. If you are a QA, you should have a basic understanding of cloud. If you are a developer, try to understand the different things: serverless, right? Containers, Kubernetes, API gateway, API management service, database, different kind of database services, right? Try to explore all these things and try to get yourself, fall into the practices of cloud. And again, if you are a senior dev, if you fall into this criteria, then you should understand how to do a troubleshooting, right? For example, if you have production deployment, now you are facing an issue. How will you troubleshoot that issue? How can you basically, do a RC, root cause analysis? You should understand, right? And many times BA will ask you, okay, this is the work that we have. What are the man days? What are the estimation of this work? So you should be able to do a technical analysis of the particular work. When I say work, that means, let's say you might have multiple services in your organization, right? And if a feature, because BA will talk to from a feature perspective. You as a developer, a senior dev, should understand this feature needs to be implemented. The changes as part of this feature needs to be implemented in 3 services. What all these services will be, what all changes will be at the high level, and what could be the estimation. So this is a technical analysis. And again, communication, meeting inputs, you should be very outspoken, drive the meetings, and many times you will have a cross team discussion, right? If you see, I have written here, you should know how to groom your junior. Your junior maybe some fresher has come in. Now, maybe that particular fresher, he or she will need technical push. You are supposed to give the hints and the direction, not the whole implementation, right? So you should understand the team management as well. So all these things you can understand. Now, as part of a senior, and if you're an experienced senior developer, I would say experienced senior developer, you've spent like 2-3 years being a senior developer, then you should understand the fundamental design principles as well. When I say fundamental, how load balancer works, how caching works, right? How your API gateway works, different, how your CDN works. So these system design principles, senior dev should understand. Why I'm saying so? Because you are at this stage, very soon many of you will be transitioning into from senior dev to the architect role, staff engineer role. There you will have to design a system, right? So in order to design a system, you should understand the design fundamentals first. So if you are experienced senior guy, try to be good at the fundamentals of system design. If you go down, I have written it here, right? Caching strategies, DNS, API gateway, replication strategy, write replication, right? Master write, multi master write, CDN, what is I said, how your zookeeper works, the coordination system, design of Cassandra, etc., all those things, right? And now if you want to transition into a staff engineer role, a kind of architect role, then everything that you have achieved so far, also team management, technical mentoring to senior devs, right? The thinking of solution, the problem solving, how can you solve a problem? Because many times people will come to you, they will ask you for a solution. Now you are the architect, you should be able to give a solution, right? By connecting the correct dots. You should be able to drive the meetings, and you should be good at designing systems. You should be good at distributed design, right? And then you should know the advanced system design. When I say advanced system design, that means you should be able to design a system, right? Rate limiting design, any design. Try to solve some case study, try to solve some architectures, try to see if there is if you do two systems are talking to each other, what could be the error scenarios, if this error can happen, cannot happen, if this happens, how can you handle that, what all trade-offs that you can put in front of the management if you want to cut out the cost. All this thinking and the trade-off, you should have a mind. That will again come with the experience, right? So you should be working under the guidance of some senior architect. Slowly you will be able to reach to a situation where you can give your own solutions, right? So the point is, in this whole journey, right, try to cover whatever I have mentioned, right? You may be not fully agree with me, you can add on it, that's your choice, again, your interest. If you have time, you can always go ahead, but this is at least the minimal somebody will expect you as part of your role, right? As part of your backend developer ecosystem role. So you can comment down, guys, if you have any question. If you want me to create any video or some other topic, you can comment it down. If you have a point to discuss with, right, you can comment it down. How did you like this video? You can comment it down. So probably next video we'll meet again with some other topic. Thank you so much, guys.